My husband locked me out of our home with his new lover inside. But his victory speech lasted less than 20 minutes. The sound of the deadbolt turning was a final, metallic heartbeat. I stood on the front porch, my nurse's uniform still smelling of hospital antiseptic, holding a grocery bag I'd no longer be unpacking. Mark didn't just change the locks. He made a production of it. He wanted an audience, and the street didn't disappoint. Curtains twitched. Old Mr. Henderson from the doors down had his phone out, pointed right at us. "It's over, Claire," Mark announced, his voice carrying, "This is my place now. You need to move on." Behind him, in the bay window of the master bedroom, stood Lydia. She was sipping from my favorite mug, the one my daughter painted for me years ago. She didn't smirk. She just watched, serene, as if observing a mildly interesting documentary. He thought this was my end. It was actually his. The suitcase he'd packed for me lay at my feet. I didn't pick it up. I didn't cry. The heat of humiliation was there. But beneath it, a cold, solid certainty I'd been nursing for months. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one number I'd programmed, but never used. "It's Claire Evans," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. "He's done it. The locks are changed. I'm outside now." The man on the line, Mr. Alden, simply replied, 15 minutes. Don't say another word to him. Mark was already walking back inside, likely to toast his conquest. He thought the house, the life, everything was his. He'd forgotten who brought it to the marriage. He'd forgotten my father's stern, loving foresight. I sat on the porch step and waited. Mrs. Rivera from across the street brought me a glass of iced tea. She placed it wordlessly beside me, her hand a brief, firm pressure on my shoulder. The street held its breath. 14 minutes later, a gray SUV parked at the curb. Mr. Alden looked like a man who carried other people's storms in his briefcase. He nodded to me, then marched to the front door. He didn't knock. He pressed the doorbell once. Long and authoritative. The door flew open. Mark filled the doorway, irritation flashing to anger. "Who are you? Get off my property." "Actually," Mr. Alden said, his voice a low rumble, "it's not your property. It never was." He lifted a legal folder. "These documents confirm that you are currently trespassing." Mark's face flushed crimson. "What is this? My name is on the mortgage. I've paid bills here for a decade. Your name was on precisely nothing." Mr. Alden interrupted coolly. The title was held in a trust established by Claire's father, Robert Evans. Upon his passing 5 years ago, full and sole ownership transferred to his daughter, Claire Evans. You were a tenant. A tenant who has now illegally barred the owner. I watched the blood drain from Mark's face. His eyes darted from the papers to me, back to the papers. Confusion, then dawning horror. Lydia appeared behind him in the hallway, her serene mask slipping into uncertainty. "That can't be right," Mark stammered. "Bob would have told me. Claire would have." "My client's father was a prudent man," Mr. Alden said. "He saw what you were long before his daughter did. He ensured she, and she alone, would always have this anchor." He produced another sheet. "This is a notice to vacate. You have 48 hours to remove yourself and your personal effects. This is also a restraining order barring you from disposing of any property within." Mark snatched the papers, his hands trembling as he scanned them. His eyes found a particular paragraph and widened. "An investigation." "What investigation?" Mr. Alden allowed a thin, humorless smile. "Your father-in-law hired a firm during the last year of his life. He was concerned about certain patterns. Your financial withdrawals, your unexplained absences, your relationship with Ms. Lydia Crane here." He glanced at Lydia, who took a step back. "The report is quite detailed. It includes timestamps, photographs, even receipts. Like the dinner at the Grove on the night Claire was at the hospice center, saying her final goodbye to her father." The silence was profound. Even the birds seemed to pause. Mark looked gutted. "Bob knew all of it. He knew enough," I said, finally standing. My legs were steady. "He knew to protect me from you." "There's more," Mr. Alden continued. and his tone turned graver. The investigation uncovered attempted loan applications using this address as collateral, applications that required forged signatures from the legal owner Claire. He let that hang to separate attempts, totaling over $90,000. The financial institutions are being notified of the fraud as we speak. That debt is yours alone, Mr. Evans. Mark's knees buckled slightly. He braced himself against the doorframe. The business was struggling. I was going to fix it by committing felony fraud. Mr. Alden finished. He turned to me. There's something else. Claire, your father left a letter. He instructed me to deliver it on this exact day. If this exact scenario unfolded, he handed me a sealed envelope. My father's bold, familiar handwriting spelled my name. My heart squeezed. He'd been fighting for me from beyond the grave. I took the envelope, the paper feeling like a sacred object. Can I read this inside? I asked. In my house? It is entirely your house, Mr. Alden affirmed. I walked past Mark. He didn't move, a statue of shattered arrogance. The smell of my own home hit me, lemon polish. Old books, but layered over it was a stranger's perfume, a foreign presence. I went to the kitchen, to the table where Dad and I had played countless chess games, and opened the letter. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I was right about Mark. God, I wish I'd been wrong. I saw the greed in his eyes when he looked at this house, not the love in his eyes when he looked at you. So, I made plans. The house was always yours. The trust was my firewall. I saw the loan forgeries in my home office files. The camera-eyed and still caught him red-handed. I knew then what he was capable of. Enclosed is a check. It's money I chose not to spend on extra treatments that would have given me a few more painful weeks. I chose to give you a fresh start instead. Use it to rebuild, to breathe, to help others who've had everything taken. You have a warrior's heart, kid. You just forgot for a while. This house remembers love, Claire, real love, ours. Now go make some new memories to keep it company. All my love, always. A check slipped out. $45,000. He'd chosen a faster, quieter exit to arm me for this battle. The sob that rose wasn't from sadness for Mark, but from the overwhelming magnitude of a father's love. I heard commotion outside. Returning to the front, I saw Mark throwing clothes into trash bags. Lydia was on the phone, speaking in low, urgent tones. Then a minivan pulled up. A man with a weary face got out, followed by two young children who stayed by the vehicle. He walked straight toward Lydia. Lydia, it's time to come home. The kids miss their mother. Mark froze, a pair of jeans in his hand. What? Who is this? I'm Paul, the man said, not looking at Mark. Lydia's husband. And these, he gestured to the children, are our son and daughter. He held out legal papers. You've been served. Abandonment and divorce. The unraveling was complete. Mark's face was a masterpiece of utter devastation. The woman he'd burned his life for was a mirage with a waiting family. Karma didn't send a bill. It delivered a full audit. Lydia, all pretense gone, snatched the papers. This isn't what you think, she hissed. But it was a weak performance. It's exactly what I think, Paul said, exhausted. This is the third time, always the same story. He looked at Mark with something close to pity. She targets guys with assets. You're not special, you were just convenient. Lydia fled to a waiting taxi I hadn't noticed. Paul led his confused children back to their van and drove away. Mark stood amidst the garbage bags of his former life, utterly alone on the lawn. He didn't own. He left within the hour. The neighbors, my silent guardians, began to disperse. Mr. Alden handed me the complete file. It's all yours, Claire. The law is squarely on your side. A year later, the house is different. I used part of Dad's money to start the Anchor Project, a legal aid workshop for women navigating financial abuse and divorce. We meet right here, in the living room. The house is full of new sounds, supportive conversation, the clink of coffee mugs, shared resilience. I'm seeing someone new. He's a teacher. He brings me flowers for the garden Dad loved. not because he wants something, but because he knows I love to see them grow. My father's letter is framed in the hall. The house does remember love. It remembers his, and now it's learning to remember mine, the kind I built myself. From the foundation he protected, this story of hidden deeds and perfect justice is exactly what we share here. If it gripped you, show the channel some love, smash that like button, and make sure you're following Eternal Revenge for more. What was the most satisfying moment for you? Was it the legal reveal or the husband's arrival? Let me know below.